call to order the meeting, Riverfront Design Review Committee meeting for December 1st, 2016. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Anthony Black.
Present.
Scott Howard. Brian Doherty.
Present.
Paul Dedman. John Joyce. Don Kasperite. Jillian Robles. Richie Split.
Present.
And David Jost. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes, which are in your packet, and with no comments, I'll entertain a motion. Moved by
Second.
Mr. Split and second by Mr. Doherty. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3 is cases withdrawn, and there are none. Item 4, continuance requests. There are no items. Item 5 is the consent docket. There are no items. Item number 6, cases for individual consideration. Item A is SRCA 16-00018 at 1409 Exchange Avenue.
Good morning.
Morning.
This request is before you because of the material that they're proposing for these structures. This is located off Exchange, known as the OU Boathouse. The current building has been there since prior to the establishment of the Scenic River Overlay Design District. And it has an 8-foot tall ribbed metal panel fence, which has been up since prior to the establishment of the design district. This is the material that is not currently allowed in that district, and the proposed structures are going to match the material of the fence. The buildings are going to be inside the fence area, as well as the fence runs around the back of the building because one of those proposed structures is going to be behind the building. So here's a close-up of the current fence, which is that ribbed metal. The existing building is not a metal material, but it has the same appearance, and so it would all fit in with what's currently there. Additionally, the buildings that are around it are either ribbed metal panels or smooth metal panels, and they were all approved with, there's 2 different spuds out there. So this is immediately adjacent to it, and then behind it you have the metal building here for the boat storage, as well as the River Public Works Maintenance Facility that you all saw, I believe it was earlier this year or last year, that has been constructed in that area. So what they're proposing, let me get to the actual, what they're proposing actually looks just like what's out there, but their only option would be to come before you and then get a variance, and it's on the Board of Adjustment agenda for this afternoon for consideration. So the 2 buildings that the longer buildings they're proposing are going to look like this, and then the restroom structure is also metal, but it's a smooth metal that they're proposing. So when you look at this aerial view of what's being proposed, we saw the fence, which is located around that yard area, and the buildings proposed will go inside it. They're taller than the fence, but it will actually look like an extension kind of the fence. And it is so far off Exchange, it's a significant way off Exchange, so it's not as though it's adjacent to the roadway. You will see it, but it'll all kind of blur in together as you drive by. So staff recommendation was that recommend approval with the condition that the applicant receives the variance from the materials regulations. And so that you'll need 2 motions today if that is what you determine to do, because you'll also need a separate motion to make a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment. We've got a representative from the Public Works Department here, as well as Triad Engineering is here to answer any questions that you might have on this proposal. Let me get back to that.
Does the applicant wish to say anything else?
Robbie Williams, Triad Design Group. Good morning. We are the engineers for the Boathouse District as well as the River Trust engineers. So we've been assisting Mike Knopp in getting this done. They've been coordinating this with OU. It's very important for OU to get these buildings installed so that when the women rowers are here, they have a workout facility and an office that the coach can be at. They usually come real early in the morning, and then they leave and go back to Norman, so this is not like a all-day office workout area. So we would appreciate your approval.
Are there any comments?
I would just like to say that, I mean, to me, this is no different than a number of existing non-compliant, structures or whatever that are going on there. So if somebody had some sort of mechanical plant or something that they were looking to expand upon, I mean, the argument that it matches what's there already, to me, is not really a valid argument in terms of what we're all about. I mean, I know it's somewhat insignificant possibly, but I don't like the idea of approving materials that are not on the list of approved materials just because it's the city, just because it's OU, whatever. To me, I mean, there's a lot of people that come before this board that don't have the resources that those entities do to make changes that I would see us turning down. So I don't see why this application would be any different.
Well, I see it a little bit differently than that. This is probably the type of, the location, what exists now, and the use that's being made of it. I can't see the benefit in requiring a lot of additional expenditure for something that isn't really going to improve the appearance unless everything else that's there now is going to be changed later also. I mean, I assume what you're proposing is pretty much what you plan to continue to use for the foreseeable future. Would that be right?
From talking with Mr. Knopp, this is temporary, but how long, it's not known. So I can't answer that question. It could be 3 to 5 years that these buildings will be there. But one advantage of these buildings is with the metal, once they're no longer needed, they can be removed. From going through all this, there's a stucco finish, and there's some other type that, like the stucco finish would have met the code but not matched. But once you put that type of trailer there, you cannot move it or everything just, the stucco falls off. So again, we've found something that matches what exists there today.
I guess I don't really even understand how these modular buildings, those aren't an issue to us. We're coming in, we're sticking a bunch of modular buildings. Why do we, or is that not an issue? That was kind of a question for staff.
No, I know what you're asking. These are not set on a permanent foundation.
The way these are,
Correct.
the way these are built is we will actually, we have a footprint, and we will provide, basically we will excavate a hole 3 foot by 3 foot and pour concrete foundation. And then the modular building company will come in and they will block it up, and then they strap it down. And
So basically it's kind of like a mobile home is what we're saying.
these buildings are designed for about 120 or 140 mile an hour winds. So
Yeah, we talked to the permit desk in one of our first meetings on this project, and they affirmed that they were treating it like a permanent building.
that's correct.
So therefore, we didn't consider it a mobile home, so to speak. And I was looking, I don't immediately know if mobile trailers are prohibited in this district. They are, for example, prohibited in downtown, and that has become an issue. But
Yeah, this is actually zoned R1, which is a residential zoning district. Their other option would have been to rezone to a SPUD, like the SPUD you saw last year, which approved metal for the river maintenance facility building of similar ribbed metal panel. So they had those two options to get the finish on the modular buildings that they wanted, and they determined that they wanted to go forward and seek the variance route for them. So there has been metal buildings approved there with the spuds of the two adjacent spuds that are out there.
Yeah, because we also talked the trailers, the temporary trailers that are at the elementary school, a little bit further west, they're using hardy board siding. We suggested that to the applicant that that might be more appropriate, and it is allowed without any variance, but for their reasons, they wanted to move forward with the metal siding.
On the schools, was there not a time frame that was established and it had to come back before us?
Yes, there was a time frame.
There was a time frame. You cited unique circumstances, that it was the school, this, if you remember, that was like August 15th, and school was opening August 16th, because of the time frame. And then the committee asked for some additional landscaping, I believe.
So this conversation is related to a question about the temporary nature or the permanent nature of the structure. So to John's point, we are charged to uphold those standards, and this structure, if I heard correctly and I recall correctly, it was there before the design standards were put in place.
The fence was, not the trailers.
Okay. Right.
And they're trying to match the fence.
Right.
Let me get
So do we have any indication when, would this be the permanent site for OU in the future, or is this an in perpetuity building to serve their needs?
I think it's your later statement. There's still a site down at the Boathouse District for the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah, OU does intend to build a permanent boathouse, not on this exact site.
And would this potentially go away, or would they use this in addition?
Are you asking, would the modular buildings go away? I cannot answer that question at this time. I mean, the existing building that's there will stay. That's the auxiliary boathouse that they use during events to come. But from my discussion with them, once the OU, women's rowing team is no longer going there, then they would remove the buildings. They would not be needed anymore, is what I understand.
Right, and there's no time frame other than, I think everybody does believe this isn't the proper final home for OU women's rowing. But also I wanted to remark, Richie, that the guidelines and the committee's decisions, everything is based on a permanent building. There's no separate guidelines or provisions for temporary or anything that defines temporary. This committee and other committees have tried to set time limits. I can't report how successful, we haven't come up on any of those. So I just mentioned that when you grant the decision, you're saying it's good in perpetuity, really.
I think that's my struggle, is this makes total sense to me as it sits. The larger question is, how long will it sit like this, and are we somehow enabling that to exist longer?
Well, the one thing I can say is the women's rowing team, from what I understand, they get up at 5 o'clock every morning. They get on a bus and they leave Norman and they come to the river and they row. And then they leave and they go back to Norman. And right now, all they have is the shell of the rowing building. And this would greatly help them in what they do. So we would appreciate your approval.
So, and I understand this, I don't think anybody takes any exception to the footprint of a new building sitting in this location and functioning the way that you're talking about. I think what we're struggling with is that the materials that are being presented are something that we've rejected others in the past, and we're going to set a precedent in doing so. the material on the fence matches the material on the existing building in profile, but not in physical material, and the physical material on the building itself, the existing building, is a compliant material?
Is it polymer, that plastic?
Polycarbonate fiberglass paint.
Yeah, that the light shines through?
Right.
But was it installed prior to the guidelines? Or
Yes.
Is it in a spud?
No, this is not.
Okay.
This building was the very first thing out there. It was,
Okay.
and it and the fence were installed prior to the guidelines, and it's zoned R1. It's not in a spud.
But the metal panel is not allowed in the profile that's being proposed. Smooth metal is, architectural metal is.
Architectural metal is, but not all smooth metal is necessarily architectural metal. I mean,
So,
we
but
split hairs there, but
Is the fiberglass panel an allowable material within the district?
I don't think it's specifically referenced, but there is that caveat for the other materials that the durability, I'm not going to get the wording correctly.
I'm looking it up.
Because what would introduction of the fiberglass panel into some of this structure that we're talking about, what would it do or not do to the use of those structures?
Okay, the guideline says, as Laura was referencing, additional materials shall be permitted on a case-by-case basis. It's just that the committee is not empowered to permit this siding because it's specifically prohibited in a different section. But if something's not otherwise specifically prohibited, the committee has the latitude to accept alternative materials. And it's, as with all of your decisions, it's on a case-by-case basis. So I don't feel you would have to assume you're setting a precedent if you cited a specific, a unique circumstance for this project on why a certain material was allowed. Does that make sense?
To me, the arguments that are being made, about some of the different things that have been brought up, or maybe they're appropriate for the Board of Adjustment. I don't understand why we would recommend it. To me, we could. Obviously, our recommendation to the Board of Adjustment could be to disapprove it, and then they could listen to all this other stuff, and they could override that if they saw fit. I would make a motion that we recommend to the Board of Adjustment that it be denied.
We also need a motion on the case and then a motion on the recommendation.
And then I have a question for
Okay.
our legal. But maybe, since that has brought up, if in fact this committee makes a recommendation for denial, that would actually, correct me if I'm wrong, make the current Board of Adjustment case kind of not necessary at this point, because the only way the Board of Adjustment could actually take action on their vote to deny it would be if an appeal is filed, which is not what's on their agenda for today. Am I correct in that?
It's kind of a confusing circumstance since both pieces are required for the project. Theoretically, the Board of Adjustment could grant the variance, but if they don't have the certificate of approval, then that's so it'd have to be a separate item for that, to appeal that to the Board of Adjustment for the project to move forward without the CA.
Right. One is appealing the decision of the committee and one is appealing the regulation. But Robbie, do you want to consider right now them approving an alternative cladding? Because then you could leave today with a clear approval.
Yes. Or we could continue the meeting till next time and the Board of Adjustment. Or continue the item, Continue the item, could we?
For what purpose? Are you going to talk to your client about a change? What's going to change?
Well, our goal today was to get approval on both items and go to the Board of Adjustment and hopefully get approval there so that we can move forward. So if that's not going to happen today, I would rather just continue the item and determine what needs to be done so that we can get this approved.
So you're saying right now, today, you can't accept a change to the cladding. You need to circle back around with.
No, yes, we could, but I need to know what that is. I mean, are they asking that it match the existing auxiliary boathouse, or are they wanting the hardy board?
And I think the chair asked that question a while ago, and we kind of went another direction.
Yeah, I think it would be what material within the guidelines would be acceptable to you as a cladding. And I was curious if the fiberglass, which is also an adjacent and consistent material, if it did fall within the guidelines, then the argument can be made that it was matching existing and in compliance. And I don't think that anyone would take exception to and that's not for me to assume, but
I believe the hardy board, we would not need a variance for the hardy board.
Correct.
Correct, because we had
Quote,
discussed that.
composite siding is
Yes, and
allowed.
we've already gotten with the manufacturer on if we needed hardy board, so we could do that. It's just the hardy board's not going to match what it looks like out there. So I think
the unique condition here is the question of
I understand.
how we're approaching
I understand.
accepting a non-compliant.
I understand.
Okay. So are we?
We would be willing to use the hardy board material if that's what you desire.
Right, the public notice didn't specify a certain material, so as long as it's allowed in your guidelines, you can put a condition.
Does anybody want to take a shot at a motion?
And with that change to hardy board, then their variance is not necessary. So there wouldn't need to be action by the Board of Adjustment. If you accepted the hardy board and approved it that way, there is no action needed by the Board of Adjustment.
I move we approve the project, what is the board, hardy? With an acceptable material such as the hardy board, and move we approve for that.
I have a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mr. Split, second by Mr. Doherty.
Can I ask for clarification? Based on the way that was worded, you actually gave them some wiggle room? If acceptable material such as hardy board is what you stated, and so I just wanted to kind of bring that up, because that, to me, does that imply that they could come forward with another acceptable material?
Are there others?
Yeah, there's 10 materials.
Right.
So do you want them to have wiggle room or not? I mean, that's the...
And the applicant needs to agree on the condition. So is hardy board?
Either way is fine with us.
So we can leave it as stated?
Okay. I have a motion, and I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and I completely understand. Have a good day.
So we have no second motion, we have no second item.
It would probably be helpful for the Board of Adjustment if you could clarify, since there wasn't a separate item listed.
I'll be reporting to their staff
Right.
person when we get through here that I guess technically it would be withdrawn because there are no actions needed by the Board of Adjustment?
No, I agree with Laura. I mean, it's an action item on the agenda for
Right.
them to provide a recommendation, so I think you should just close it out and provide the recommendation, which would be to deny the change
Okay,
of material.
I gotcha.
From what I'm hearing.
So I would like a motion to the Board of Adjustment that states that we approved based on a change of material.
That you do not,
Oh, okay.
a
so-
recommendation from this board to deny the variance from the materials regulations, because you do not want them to use something else.
So who authored it? Okay, and a motion by Mr. Joyce, a second by Mr. Doherty. All in favor? Aye.
Okay, the applicant has asked for clarification, and I'm sorry, I already got out of this one. The restroom trailer is a smooth metal, and so the question is that going to be allowed? It's not the ribbed metal, which is what the fence is, which is these. And the restroom trailer is located here, so more toward the front of the fenced area. The restroom trailer actually will be more of a mobile, because my understanding is it can go to events. And so then they're putting it at the end so they can move it. Because they don't have central facilities there.
Some smooth metal panels have been approved in the district.
The smooth metal, there is some smooth metal in the two spuds that are next to this. There is a smooth metal panel that ultimately got approved, I think, for the boat dock that's behind it. They had to come in and change it because of I think a material that was approved originally was too heavy, and they had to change the material they used. It's not silver like this. Everything out there is white when you look at the pictures, and I can go, because the boathouse, this one is metal, the one here is metal, but the one in the back is a ribbed metal. And the one next door it has a texture to it, but it's not a definitive ribbed. It doesn't have that defining vertical piece in it. It's more of a smooth metal.
Am I correct that the corrugated metal panel can accept the hardy board installation, but that smooth metal panel would probably not, without voiding the warranty? I don't think, you couldn't attach hardy board to that smooth metal mobile.
No, it's my understanding they either rent or lease. I mean, they pay to have it serviced and all that.
I can't think of a similar project in other districts. Staff has interpreted that this is integral cladding. Like this isn't an applied cladding. It's the object, kind of like a shipping container, which you guys did approve a couple months ago. The shipping container is a ribbed metal, but it's not a applied cladding. It's its own thing. So that's how staff has interpreted that on other projects. But I don't remember that it's come to the committee.
To me, this particular item, so you're not going to tell me that they're going to dig out 3 feet and stick this thing down. It's just going to sit as it does in this picture. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So to me, it's kind of a much nicer porta potty, kind of like they would have at a PGA golf tour event or something like that. It's just temporary. To me, that's there's no way that I can imagine we could approve it for anything other than that. You can't take something like that and park it anywhere in the city and just say, this is going to sit. You're going to tell me that thing's good, meets building code? There's no way.
You've talked to the permit desk, and you guys have worked out what you need to satisfy, right? To Mike Miller?
Yes, and we would need to get clarification on it was our understanding we could use the trailer when we had the meeting, this restroom, that he was going to just look at the modular buildings.
So he's permitting the modular buildings, and these aren't getting a permit. These are just a portable toilet facility.
That's correct. Or they will obtain what permit is necessary.
I don't think it's anything we have to look at.
So the committee, I think, is saying they don't feel they need to separately weigh in on, evaluate the portable. We're trying to, Laura and I are trying to figure out if you need a motion. That's what we're trying to figure out.
So no motion.
Just for clarification for the Board of Adjustment this afternoon, so the previous motion that had passed that denied the certificate of approval, and then the second motion that had recommended a denial of the variance is what we want to stand. Okay.
Right, the CA was approved with conditions.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then the variance request was recommended denial.
And all were relating to the portable buildings and not the toilet facilities.
So my question today, at 1:30 for the Board of Adjustment, will they be acting on the restroom itself? Or will there?
There's no need for them to act on the restroom because it's allowable. There's not a variance needed for you to park that in there. And correct me if I'm wrong.
If that's an allowed material in the district, then there wouldn't be a variance required for that.
It's being treated more like a piece of equipment than a structure.
Very well.
Okay.
So do we need to attend the Board of Adjustment? I mean, it doesn't matter.
I'll be attending, and Laura is the... is the
Well,
lead-
I can
is
be there.
the legal
I'll be
person.
back today, just in case.
Okay, now, I was going to be there to answer any questions on it, so...
Okay, I'll be back. Just make sure. Okay.
Thank you. Item number 7 is other business.
Thank you.
And item A is election of the officers, chair and vice chair.
I know somebody will ask me this because they ask me every year about expiring terms. Dawn, Scott, and Jillian, their terms just recently expired, and I have submitted, Scott and Dawn would like to continue to serve, and they're eligible to serve, so I've submitted their reappointment information to the mayor's office. Jillian does not wish to continue serving, so I'm going to recommend a replacement for her slot. Richie, John, Tony, David, and Paul, all of their terms have expired. They are not eligible for another appointment because that's all their third consecutive terms. And I'm working with the mayor's office to appoint new commissioners. And then Brian, his term expired a long time ago, and he is not eligible for reappointment either. So, of the people currently on the board who could serve, neither are here. Don and Scott.
We can't appoint a chair and
Sure
a
you
vice chair of a person who is not eligible to serve.
You could, and if at whatever time their replacement is appointed, we could re-vote a chair and vice chair.
Does anybody want to make a motion to leave the chair and vice chair as they sit?
So moved.
Trying to make life easy.
I'm sorry, real quick. Yeah, I misstated. That's why I had John circled. John is eligible for reappointment.
Does your motion still stand, or would you like to amend it? I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. So I'll remain chair, and Scott will remain vice chair.
And just
So Lisa, is it a calendar year? So like Paul won't be here next month? Or?
No, most of the terms expired at the end of October. So depending on when people were appointed, kind of depends on when it expires. Yes, so please plan to come to the next meeting until I tell you otherwise.
Brian can attest to that. Item number 8 is communications, and item A is the 2017 meeting schedule.
Workshop is next Friday. Yeah, the calendar, that's for your, that's the posted copy to put in your notebooks and in your calendars at work. Then, yeah, next Friday, if you haven't already accepted or declined Paula's calendar invitation, please do so.
Item B is the administrative approval report. Number 1 is SRCA 16-00010, R1 at 200 and 220 Southeast 4th Street in the Regatta District. Item 2 is SRCA 16-00016 at 747 Southeast 15th Street in the Regatta District. Item 3 is SRCA 16-00017 at 1206 Exchange Avenue in the Farmers Market District. And those are just for our... Okay. Item C is comments from the Planning Department staff. Okay. And item D is comments from the committee members.
Comments from commissioners,
Yes.
members? I just think that we're going to have we're going to continue to have the kind of situation we did today, and we're going to have those, Gordian knots to try to untie from now on, probably because of the nature of the design district. I mean, there's so many different uses there, and so many are existing and are going to stay there. We've got everything from heavy industrial to light industrial to all the new things that are emerging, and maybe we ought to figure out a way to have some time to talk a little bit about, maybe it would be out of a committee situation or out of a formal meeting situation, but we need to kind of see where we all stand on individually, I guess, and on the issue of practicality versus idealism. I mean, my suggestion was that we take a look at what's already there and what's going to stay there and what would be really visible at the distance we'd be seeing it from. But I don't disagree with John taking the stand he did either. I mean, but we just, it's going to be a conundrum. Because it is an old established light industrial to heavy industrial area, parts of it are, and that's not going to go away. And there's certain things that the city has established that they're satisfied to leave the way it is, that's non-conforming, and that creates a little bit of a conflict in my mind about turning down things that are currently proposed, but by the city, as a matter of fact, but the city happy to leave things that don't conform the way they are. That's just a comment.
Yeah, maybe at a upcoming, I hate to schedule an additional meeting because everyone's so busy, but maybe our meetings usually are pretty short, so maybe staff can prepare a presentation going through the guidelines and just discuss it, because of all of the sub-districts have different thresholds for what materials are appropriate given the existing and future uses. So we could run through that and see if everybody thinks that's still hitting the mark or if it does need a deeper dive into refreshing it. Because the guidelines are about 10 years old now, Paula? 10 years old, so the idea of a refresh might not be too far off.
And I do agree, I do remember back when Jim Hasenbach was doing a lot of it, and a lot of these questions were brought up when we were, you know, it was about how we look forward to it, and because of all the variants, I totally agree with David, and I really appreciate what John said today. But, you know, I'm glad there was, it sounds like a suitable, you know, way to turn around and to address it. I mean, there was an alternative product that was in compliance, and we were fortunate on that, but it is a tough one.
I'd just like to see if we can establish a real even playing field for, there have been cases, some of them businesses and some of them private property owners that we've denied and came in with really valid arguments for an existing building that they were using and so on and so forth. Yes, maybe in hindsight, there's some things that we could look at in the future and see if it's could have better clarity. Any other comments?
Well, I would just say that, I mean, I can remember talking about, you know, kind of one of the charges of the whole design district and everything is to not kind of be happy with the status quo, that we're trying to move in a particular direction. And so when you start having people like, okay, here I am, I've got this existing fence that doesn't comply, and now I'm putting up a big section of new fence that does, that at some point that, you know, maybe they're going to look at that and think, oh, what the heck, you know, let's go ahead and replace that old fence with, you know, we'll do the whole thing. And you know, we start kind of upgrading things. We don't just go with, okay, this is what this area looks like right now, as long as it doesn't look worse. No, we're trying to move it forward. And, you know, in some cases I could see sort of a economic hindrance or something, but certainly not the city, certainly not OU, certainly not OG&E. You know, some of the people that have come in front of us kind of asking us to bend our guidelines. That's just my thought.
I'll have to entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved and second, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all.